people are like, how do I make money? And I think that is actually the wrong question. And it might actually sound really, really, really bad, but it's how do I take money?
That's Timo Armoo, a serial entrepreneur who sold his marketing agency Fanbytes for tens of millions.
We had a bunch of offers from different companies, and I've never actually told this story before, so you're getting the exclusive.
In this episode, Timo reveals how anyone can sell a business for a life-changing amount of money.
The reason why people don't sell to richer people is often because they are not rich themselves. And sometimes you genuinely just have to say it out loud. You are no different.
The frameworks he used to grow from 10K a month to millions a month.
0 to say 10K a month. How do I find a customer? And then how do I just serve them in a way where I get a predictable outcome every single time? From 10 to 100K a month. How do I do the same thing that I just did, but then for more people? From 100K to 1 million.
That is like blowing my brain. Where most founders get stuck.
We have 8 billion people in the world. You have 20 customers. Do you really think that you've exhausted the potential customers?
How he built his personal brand to hundreds of thousands of followers.
People buy into the format before they buy into the person. Personal brands are now becoming media brands. And I actually think that's where personal brand is going, especially on short form.
And so much more.
Penguin, my publisher, would not want me to say this.
That is insane.
Bro, the first business, just make it mad simple. Just get your bag.
This is an entrepreneurship masterclass. I really hope you enjoy it. If you do, please subscribe and let's dive in. You have built and sold multiple companies at all the different stages. Do you want to just quickly talk us through your exits?
Exits. All right. So I've done 4. 2 of them were companies I founded. 2 of them were companies I didn't found, but I brokered them. So first company I ever sold was at the teeny weeny age of 17. It was an online magazine called Entrepreneur Express. That company I basically started while I was in sixth form, and then we sold that business for 110 grand at 17. I was like, whoa, this is the most amount of money that you've ever made in your entire life, because at that time I was like this council estate kid, and I was like, oh my God, 110 grand, insane. And then my claim to fame, I guess, is a company called Fanbytes, which I started when I was 21, which, to be honest, was really early in this whole creator world, right? Mm-hmm. And we were basically the middleman connecting creators to brands and helping them to activate campaigns. We'll come to why later on you should not do that business now, but for that time, it was a great business. We sold our company when I was 27, so about 3 years ago, for tens of millions of pounds. And then since then, I sold 2 more companies. One was a PR agency that we sold for, if I don't say the name, I can say the amount. Okay. A PR agency that we sold for 19 million, in which I brokered the deal. And then the other one was a media data business. And so we sold data specifically to PE firms, banks, for alternative data. And that one we sold for $23 million.
Wow, this is insane.
Yeah.
So
just to be clear, those 2, I came in as the broker of the deal. So I got a percentage of it, but I wasn't the founder of it. I joined the board and then I brokered it.
Yeah, so makes sense. But still, it's insane. This is the dream. This is what so many people out there aspire to do who listen to this show, is build something, build a company, and then sell it for, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions. That's the dream. So what I'd love to do is use this episode as a step-by-step breakdown of how you recommend someone does that, having already done it and also maybe made some of the mistakes.
So many hours.
You've written What's Stopping You,
yes.
And this is your 11 cheat codes to life and business, right?
Yeah. So I started writing this book about 2 years ago. It definitely started off as a labor of love. It was basically, if I was writing a letter to my younger, earlier entrepreneur and telling him basically, do this and don't do that, what would I tell them? And so it's a combination of life stuff, so mental frameworks to help you get through the hard times. So for example, the first cheat code in this book is called We Are the Stories That We Tell Ourselves, because it all starts off with that as the foundation. And then that's the first half. And then the second half is all about business. It's all about, how to find the right customers, how to pick the right idea, how to package your business to sell. How do you basically go through that? So my hope is basically that the people who read this would basically be that early stage entrepreneur, that early stage hustler who's trying to make something happen. Maybe not just building a business, but like they are creative, they're creating content, they're just trying to understand their way through this whole messy world of business. And this book can be their accomplice through it. And that's what What's Stopping You is going to be. It's out on January 15th and should be banging.
Amazing. All right. Well, if I'm listening to this, I'm thinking it sounds good. I'm either on the path or I'm thinking about going on the path. What would be step one from the cheat codes? Like where should I start if I'm thinking of creating something valuable that I can sell?
So the first cheat code to this is we are the story you tell ourselves. This is on video, right? Okay, cool. So the first cheat code is we are the stories we tell ourselves. And the reason I actually started it off is because I think before you do anything of significance, you have to believe you are the sort of person who can do something of significance, right? So, I mean, during Fanbytes, there were so many times when we were just, myself and my two co-founders, were just driven by this desire to just, this self-belief to say, well, someone's got to make this business successful, so why not us? And growing up, I had a lot of like negative influence around me, like growing up in South London, Old Kent Road, Peckham, Brixton. And so my physical environment was like very different, right? It was like council estate, drugs, gang stuff. But my mental environment was like, no, you got to make it happen. You got to make it win. You're going to make it win. And so probably the first cheat code I would say, and it sounds so naff, but it's actually true, which is like, it starts off with, what's the story that you tell yourself? Do you tell yourself the story that, of course, I'm going to become a success. Of course, I'm going to become a successful entrepreneur. Because once you do that, what happens is like, I say to so many of my friends, what happens is your brain then starts to just act like the sort of person who does. So you just become bolder rather than this, oh, I've got a content agency and I'm charging like £500. No, you are a big shot. So now go start off at $5,000, even though you don't think that at that point that you're worth the $5,000, your like self-belief and your self-image will get you to that. So the first thing is rewrite the story that you tell yourself and actively do that, which I did a lot through journaling. I did a lot through like almost brainwashing myself every single day when I was coming up in the game. And that is a killer foundation. Everything else about how to get customers, how to do all that stuff, if it's based on a shaky foundation, it just doesn't work.
How do you make sure that you actually follow through and believe in that? Because I've even heard you talk about with Fanbytes, like initially charging clients, like Go Ape, I think like £300 for a service fee versus like, so kind of thinking what is my actual value to the marketplace versus like how I perceive my own value. Like how do you build that habit? Is it journaling?
So I think there are two things that helped me a lot to effectively act bigger. The first thing was that I said I will start very, very small. And so sure, it's fine to do that first thing, even for free, that first service for free. But then right afterwards, like make a promise to yourself that the next one I'm going to charge like £300, right? And then the next one I'm then going to charge £1,000. And then the next one I'm going to charge £2,000. So you want to take it in like incremental steps. In fact, like in the book, cheat code number 11, it's like everything big starts small. Because when we started our first ever activation with Go Ape, massive, huge company, we're charging them £300 for an influencer campaign. In 6 years, when we sold the company, like our average order value was $300,000. Like all that happened, basically 100x, right, in 6 years. And a big part of it was the same service. We just basically had the balls and also had enough evidence to basically show that we could charge more. So to answer your question, I think that the easiest way to make this work is to gather enough evidence that you're the sort of person who can do X, Y, Z, and then build on top of that. So start off small, then the next ask, make it slightly bigger, and then slightly bigger, and then slightly bigger. And then at some point you go, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like I am now being paid hundreds of thousands to do a service, which a few years ago, I was begging people to actually do.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's finding a skill or a service and then building that confidence, like thinking bigger every time, like seeing how far you can push it.
Because confidence comes from the reps, right? Like one of my friends, Maya, she has also a very good book called Visualize. And she and I talk about this, which is we constantly talk about going to the physical gym, but we don't talk about going to the mental gym. And if you think about a physical gym, when you go into a gym and you're trying to lift a weight, you don't instantly go for like the heaviest weights, right? What you do is that you build up to it. Like it's a whole thing called progressive overload. So similarly in business and in your mind, you want to like progressively overload your mind, which is that you start off small, doing a small practice, and then every single day, every single week, you just do a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And then eventually, similar to the gym, you go to the gym and you're like, oh crap, I am now lifting like 40 kgs, right?
Yeah.
And mentally, you'll also be like, wow, I am now doing more than I thought could be possible. So you want to progressively overload your brain rather than just thinking about, I now need to go to the biggest thing right now.
And in your case with selling a company, like what was the first sale that you did that kind of like proved that you could do it? That was the Entrepreneur Express, right?
Yeah. I mean, that is a perfect example. That is such a perfect example because Entrepreneur Express sold for 110 grand to this American agency, Horizon Media. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that's so much money. And doing Fanbytes, I realized that is literally like a small campaign for a brand.
Mm-hmm.
But if that hadn't happened, then there is no chance that I would have then gone on to do Fanbytes. It was just building enough evidence that I'm the sort of person who can do it.
Yeah. And what was Entrepreneur Access? That was like a magazine or web page?
Just like an online magazine. Like think about Business Insider, Forbes, Inc. But the main thing that we did very well was that we knew how to drive traffic through Facebook pages. And whereas all our competitors were trying to rank through SEO and Google Ads and like syndicates, etc., I was in a bunch of groups with people who knew how to grow Facebook pages.
Yeah.
And so what I then learned to do was I then learned to build Facebook pages myself. And I'd create these Facebook pages about like Tony Robbins quotes, Gary Vee quotes, motivational quotes. And my whole thesis was, if somebody is reading this Facebook page, then the odds are they're going to be very interested in my online business magazine. And so then the whole thing just became a game of, if I take an article from here, I put it in the Facebook page, that should drive people there, right? There's a chapter in this actually, like cheat code number 2 is your inexperience is a superpower. And I swear to you, that Facebook thing I just told you was so obvious to me because I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Yeah.
Whereas our competitors were like, right, so this is how we do our SEO play. This is how we do our Google Ads play. And I'm like, brother, I don't know what any of that stuff is, but I do know Facebook pages, right? And I see this with like so many creators here, which is they all say, well, I'm not ready because of X, or I can't do this because of X. And often, and I say this in the book, it's like, because you haven't done it is the reason why you're going to win. Like, because you don't know the terminology and you're going to think from very first principles is the reason why you're going to do well. And if everyone just took that to heart, I mean, I dedicate a whole chapter to this, and it's again why it's number 2. It's like, okay, cheat code number 1 will get your mind right, and then cheat code number 2 will then go into, all right, you may not have done this before. You may not have reached the heights that you want to get to before, but actually here's how to reframe it and actually show that as a result of that, and here are tactical ways as a result of that, you're going to end up winning.
Did you get lucky in selling that first one? Is that a little bit there as well? Like in terms of like, why did they buy it?
So it's funny that you should ask me about luck because cheat code number 10, hey, this book is great, isn't it? Cheat code number 10 is literally like how to get lucky.
Yeah.
You know, people often leave a lot of things to chance and they say, oh, like he got lucky.
Yeah.
He got lucky, she got lucky.
Uh-huh.
And I used to get very frustrated when I would watch these videos of like successful people and they say, oh, I got lucky. And I used to be like, bro, don't stop the cap, you know? Like, tell me what you actually did. This is gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And over time, I've come to realize that I think a lot of us have got lucky and then we only realize that actually we created that luck.
Uh-huh.
And so I think about this concept, and in the book we talk about like manufactured luck. Mm-hmm. And so manufactured luck is basically when you do certain things and as a result, things that you didn't actually do end up happening. So a good example is actually Fanbytes, right? We grew that company from just me and 2 co-founders to 80 people, multi-8 figures in revenue, and then we sold it, right?
Quick favor to ask, if you're enjoying this episode, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It helps me get bigger and better guests and keep growing this podcast for you. Now, let's get back into this week's episode.
I'm going to tell you 3 stories of when we got insanely lucky. The first bit of luck was actually finding my co-founders. So Ambrose, for example, my COO, I met him because I went to this leadership event randomly because the woman hosting it said, hey, just come along. And the next day I was going to France. But then I was like, actually, no, fine. I'll just go and see what's going on. And so badly that like everyone there was wearing suits and I was like wearing a shirt or something. I didn't care. And I went and I just happened to sit down next to Ambrose.
Yeah.
And I remember the speaker said something like, look to your left, look to your right. You could be sitting next to your next business partner. And Ambrose, he says this story a lot, but Ambrose like turned and faced me. He was just like, ain't no fucking way this guy's going to be my business partner, right? Because I just look scruffy or whatever, right? But it turns out like we started talking, we bonded over books and just life philosophy. He was also from Ghana. So you could say like, whoa, that was lucky how you found him, right? But then the outcome or the reason why that happened was because I put myself in a situation where luck could actually happen. Another one was actually how we landed our biggest ever investor, a guy called York. So in our second year of Fanbytes, we're doing well, and we're starting to activate these campaigns where we are helping apps to just get a ton of downloads. And one of the apps that we worked with was an app called Tunemoji. And Tunemoji was like a music messaging app. And through our campaign, through our influencer campaign, Tunemoji then became the like #1 trending app in the App Store. And the founders like, whoa, this is insane. So I go to the office the next day and he's like, what the heck? This is insane. Do you want to raise money? I'm going to introduce you to my investor. And his investor, his main investor, happened to be York. And York basically ended up, by the end of the business, we had raised like 2 million. I think York had put in like close to half of that, right? Now, you could say, well, the way to get investors is to do something for a client and then they introduce you to the investor. No, the way to then get luckier, i.e. we got lucky to find that investor, was that, again, we just did stuff. Like we did stuff to help people to get an outcome they wanted. And then a second order consequence of that was that we got luckier by being introduced to an investor. So there's like 2 takeaways from those 2 stories, right? The first one is like, aggressively put yourself in positions where you can network with other people because every opportunity that you actively want is basically in the pockets and the phones of other people. This is something people don't think about. It's like, people are like, how do I make money? And I think that is actually the wrong question because when you say make money, it's like, how do I sit here and then money comes?
Yeah.
And that's a completely different way to think about it. I think a better way to think about it, and it might actually sound really, really, really bad, but it's how do I take money?
Yeah.
And the take money is not a negative thing. It's how do I take money from another person in return for me giving them something that was actually valuable. And so the takeaway about how you get luckier, one of them is aggressively network and put yourself in positions where the luck in other people's pockets and minds can then actually benefit you. And then the second thing, which is the story about York and the investor, is aggressively provide value to people. And then at some point, you would get the value either indirectly or directly. And those 2 are just such good stories. And then the third story is actually how we sold the business Fanbytes, because it's actually an insane one, which is we had a bunch of offers from different companies. And I've never actually told this story before, so you're getting the exclusive. We had 2 offers from 2 different companies, like, great deals, etc. And then at some point, what I did was I hosted this I guess you can call it a sleepover. I don't know, like an entrepreneur sleepover. I hosted this event in this house in North London. And one of the guys who saw that I was hosting it was a friend of mine who I'd gone to the same university with. And he came over and I was saying, yeah, we're in the process of selling, etc. And then he actually worked for a private equity group, Living Bridge. And he was like, interesting. I think potentially my PE group would be interested in it because we've just bought a company called Brain Labs and they are rolling things up. And so I was like, okay, yeah, cool, interesting. And then I then told our banker about that and then they synced together. And literally at the final moment, Brain Labs then put in an offer.
Wow.
And I'd always liked Brain Labs. Like I'd heard about them from ages. I loved the founder, Dan. I thought he was great. They'd built a company which was like 900 people in record time. I was like, this is a cool company. The lesson in that about how to get luckier is just play long-term games with long-term people. I had known that guy from uni when I was like 19. We sold the company at 27. But I had kept in contact with the guy. I just hey, I'm just helping you out. Hey, check this out, etc. And again, goes back to the fact that every single outcome that you actively want is in the pockets and the minds of other people. And so you cannot just play short-term games with short-term people because what will happen is you get short-term results. And wealth and selling businesses or building anything of any significance is a long-term game.
Wow. That is insane.
Yeah, crazy story, innit?
That is insane. That is so useful. I think people are going to love that. So we've got think bigger.
Yeah.
The stories that we tell ourselves. We've got put yourself in positions to get lucky, and like 3 different ways to do that. What else should people be thinking about in terms of, I want to create a company that's extremely valuable so that it's sellable?
Something very controversial. The internet is not going to love this, but it actually doesn't matter how hard you work. I think we are told so much that you have to work really hard. And I think that is a BS narrative. What matters more than how hard you work is what you choose to work on.
Okay.
And I think more entrepreneurs should spend 70% of their time thinking about what they choose to work on and then the other 30% actually working on the thing.
Interesting.
So here's what I mean. If you pick the right wave to surf, what can eventually happen is you don't actually need to be that good a surfer.
Yeah.
You just need to still be on the surfboard when the tide goes out. And so, for example, with Fanbytes, in 2017, people didn't understand the world of influencer marketing, but we did. And people didn't understand what these kids in their bedrooms were doing, just creating content, and suddenly millions of people were following them. But I was like, oh, that's attention. And so if we just get on this particular wave, eventually what will happen is when the tide goes out, all we have to do is not be the person who's on the surfboard doing all the somersaults and all of that stuff. It's just be the person doing the basic things, serving customers, giving them value, growing a team, building a machine that helps to do that. And eventually, when the tide goes out, which means in business terms, when there's consolidation, when the big companies want to buy the small companies, when that happens, we'll just be in the game. So it's no surprise that within a year of us selling, like 6 other influencer companies sold. You know, the year before, Lad Bible went public for 300 million. Like Goat Agency sold. Like so many different influence agencies sold. It's because at that point, we had reached the period of consolidation in the industry. But so many entrepreneurs don't spend enough time thinking about that. They go, I want this idea to exist. Okay, now I make it exist.
Yeah.
It's like, no. You might want the idea to exist, but does the market want it to exist? And is the market in a period of nascency, as in it is early on enough that if you're just in the game, what would eventually happen is as it grows, you will grow and then you benefit from consolidation.
Interesting. Why is that so powerful then? Is that because, like in your case, first of all, with Entrepreneur Express, like the company didn't understand like Facebook pages and all that stuff. So they were actually like buying that expertise. And then with Fanbytes, you chose to start a influencer agency focused on Gen Z and like all these like new platforms where, so does that work because the marketplace like doesn't have the expertise?
Yeah. There's this whole idea in business called the expertise gap. And the expertise gap is basically, let's say I know more about this thing and my level of understanding is here. Yeah. And your level of understanding is here. Yeah. Everything in between this is just money. Because it's basically saying, I am prepared to pay you so that I can close the gap here. The problem is when you start a business and there is no expertise gap or it's quite small.
Yeah.
And then if that happens, then I can't charge you.
Yeah.
I can't charge you enough. If I'm like, well, I want to set up a gardening company. Cool. Maybe the gap here is that you know how to garden your own home, but you just don't want to do it, right? So the gap is here. Yeah. But if you wanted to charge people a lot, let's say for your gardening company, you would ask and say, who really does not have a clue about gardening? Yeah. And it might then be, well, really big companies who are so busy making money from their technology, but then they have a massive garden in front of their office. And so therefore, actually, like the expertise gap is, I know how to mow really huge gardens and you don't know how to and you can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And now the gap is much bigger. And so this is why it's very important to like think about what is the gap that you're trying to actually play in. And if you're in a business where there isn't a gap, this is why I tell people like starting an influencer company now is stupid. Yeah. Because brands are running their own influencer programs. Brands get it. Everyone gets it, right? Yeah. And so it doesn't make sense to do it now. So you want to go for where there is a gap because that's where you can charge more.
At the time of Fanbytes, it would have been like those brands, they know how to spend on TV, they know how to spend on like billboard advertising, but they've got no idea about this new world of influencer. And there's probably like very few providers as well, right? Yeah. What in 2026 would be like the influence areas, do you think?
Well, I mean, the most obvious one, and you've probably heard it every single scroll that you do, it'll be some variation of like AI automation.
Yeah.
Because again, Mark, who runs a dentist business, which makes 10 million a year, Mark just knows how to be a great dentist and run his practice. Mm-hmm. Mark doesn't even know what Claude is. Mark doesn't know what N8N is, right? So you selling solutions to Mark will be very, very straightforward. And this gap is going to be here for probably the next 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And then eventually it's going to close because what will happen is people will then bring in-house their own AI solutions, blah, 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 blah.
What else is important there? Is it also like the types of customer? Because I've heard you talk about selling to like rich people versus poor people.
Yeah. So one of the biggest changes that we did in Fanbytes and in all the companies I'm involved in is I always look at what is the quality of the customer because all revenue is not the same. Mm-hmm. So when you're growing a business or scaling a business or trying to sell a business, one of the questions that people will ask you is, what is the quality of revenue? Mm-hmm. And that's a very important thing. Quality of revenue is basically saying, who are the customers this revenue comes from? And are they sticky customers and are they premium customers? And so this is why it's so important to sell to richer people, because when you are trying to sell a company, if a lot of your customers are people with already high disposable income or consumers or brands, to a buyer, they're going, wow, this is amazing. This means that that customer is actually going to be here for a much longer time. That customer, we can sell more to that person. Mm-hmm. And so if you are doing any business, whether it's a content agency, personal brand agency, video agency, one of the most practical things you can do is actually to get a sheet of paper and write out on this sheet of paper, who are all my possible customers? Mm-hmm. And then once you've identified that, then say, who is the richest of all of these? And then what you then do is something called a problem mapping. What you do is that you say, does the problem that I'm solving for them, does it match to actually the budget that they have for it? So, for example, with Fanbytes, one reason why at the beginning it was very difficult for us to like charge more was because candidly, we were selling to broke people. And the broke people are like broke businesses. It's like the 5-person startup who's got an idea and is trying to get it off the ground. And like, if we charge them 10 grand, it's like, this is the last 10 grand they'll ever see in their lives, right? Yeah. And then at some point, I remember going, hang on a sec, we can just take the same thing and just like charge a bigger brand. Rather than going for the beauty brand who is just 3 people who have just started, let's just like go up market and just see what will happen if we wanted to sell this to Charlotte Tilbury.
Yeah.
what would need to be true in order for us to sell this to L'Oreal? Okay, we would need to have greater service. We would need to have greater output. We would need to have a greater customer success team. Okay, is it worth us spending and investing in that if it makes us £100,000 more? Yes. And so it is entirely possible for you to take the exact same product and just apply it to a different, richer market and make more money. But the reason why people, and I'm going to say this and it's going to piss people off, the reason why people don't sell to richer people is often because they are not rich themselves.
Interesting.
And so what happens, and I have gone through this, which is the first time that I asked someone to spend $100,000 on an influencer campaign, it was over Zoom, and I couldn't actually look them in the face.
Yeah.
So I opened up a new tab and said, "Oh yeah, $100,000," you know. And it's because at that point I had never, even though I had had some success before, for this particular business, I hadn't charged someone $100,000.
Yeah.
And so it felt really icky to me. It felt really difficult for me because I hadn't done it before. But once you break through that mental barrier of doing it, then you find that actually it is just like a very straightforward thing. Like in the book, there is a cheat code number 4. I'm looking at it right now. It says like, do it scared. Because there were so many things, especially the bigger decisions, which were all some variation of like, I'm scared to do this. I know I should be doing this. But rather than waiting to be not scared, I'm just going to do it knowing that I'm scared. And just that mental framework has just helped me so much. It's helped so many of the companies that I run where I was like, yep, this is going to be a bit jarring, but you kind of got to do it because you can't get rid of the fact that it's going to be jarring.
What else is useful in having conviction in those things? It's like saying it's $100,000. Like, is it your environment? Like, is that important? Is it like how you dress? Is it like how you carry yourself? Like,
so here's a
do you
hack.
have to think like that? Like,
yeah. So I'm from Ghana.
Yeah.
And my mum, anytime she saw someone like successful doing something, and she saw me almost being like, "Oh wow, that's so crazy," she'd be like, "Well, do they have 2 heads?" And she'd always ask me that question.
Yeah.
And even now she does, right? And the way that she says that is always it always hits me. I always go, yeah, man, like the person doesn't have 2 heads. They have 2 eyes, they have a nose, they have ears. It's like, they are no different to me. And it does take a lot of mental unwiring for you to basically go, that person is no different to me. And sometimes you genuinely just have to say it out loud. Like you have to say like, you are no different to me. I remember one of the things now is we have a fund where we buy media companies. And I remember raising money for that fund. And it was the first time that I'd raised that amount. This was like an early fund, 30 million. And I was like, okay, cool. I've never really asked someone for like 30 million before. Well, interesting. And then I remember meeting a bunch of my friends who had raised like 100 million plus and thinking, all right, bro, you are no different to me. So if you can do it, then bloody hell, mate, you know? And it's actually one of the takeaways I want people to take from this book, What's Stopping You. It's basically like, at the end of the book, I want you to basically go, if this bozo can do it, then I can do it. Like, generally, I almost don't want you to be inspired.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to almost be like annoyed at the fact that if this guy with all his like self-doubt and uncertainty and negative stories that he told himself at the beginning, if he can basically work through that and eventually achieve what he's achieved, then there's no reason why I can't either.
If you're getting lots of value from all of the frameworks and strategies that Timo has shared in this episode, I'm going to put a full breakdown of them in my next newsletter. You can get a copy for free at the link in the description. So if you want to implement some of the things that Timo has talked through, you can get a copy of them at the link in the description. Now let's get back to the episode. What else is important here in building a company on that journey?
To sell.
Yeah. What about the boring stuff? Like, is a lot of this actually just boring stuff? I've heard you talking about like people see you now maybe on Instagram and they see you as this philosophical guy and this thinker and doing exciting things, whereas actually like when you're in the trenches, you're actually just doing a lot of the same stuff over and over again. And like the actual operations of the company, is that where like most people actually get stuck? Like what are the levels? Let's say we're going from like 10K a month, 100K a month,
Yeah.
million a month. Like, where do people get stuck?
The first thing is you can tell how successful a company's going to be based on how boring it is.
Yeah.
Because the more boring it is, the more it is, we found a winning formula and we just keep doing it. And we just keep doing it. It's not really exciting now to work at Oracle. It's not exciting now to work at Facebook. It's not exciting once you know what you are doing and you just keep optimizing it. And so from 0 to say 10K a month, it really is, how do I find a customer? And then how do I just serve them in a way where I get a predictable outcome every single time? From 10 to 100K a month, it is, how do I do the same thing that I just did, but then for more people? And the way you get the more people is very simple. You ask the people who you had done the 0 to 10K a month, you say, hello, we rely on referrals from companies like yours. Are there 3 people that you think are good enough for us to work with? Could you introduce us? We've done that in every business that I've been involved in, and it's always worked. Because if I'm helping you achieve an outcome and I'm saying, hey, can you pay back the favor by introducing us to other people? There's no reason why you wouldn't. What you're doing is just iterating what you did from 0 to 10K, and then you are then bringing in more people to help you do that. When it comes to the more people, one of the things I find people do as a massive mistake in business is that they try and hire people to do the thing, which is the golden goose. So the golden goose is, in any business, there are a number of functions or roles or processes which actually are the thing that make the business work. So for example, you're running a content agency. Now, what I found a lot of people do as a mistake is they say, all right, now it's time to scale, right? Okay, fine. And then they go and hire a salesperson, or they say, I'm looking for someone to help scale my sales. But that is stupid, because at that stage, you're still in the stage where you're selling a vision and selling a dream, and you're selling a product and selling an outcome, and people still have to buy into you. And so what you want to do is then hire people who can handle a lot of the back office op stuff, the process stuff. Because if you don't, what would happen is you would outsource your golden goose, and you never want to do that. Even when Fanbytes got to a stage where it was like 7-8 million a year, I was still the person who was like the head of sales, the commercial director. And you'd go, wait, why? And it's because I realized that, yes, it was good that we're running influencer campaigns, but still, when we are doing a great sale to Estee Lauder or Adidas, I shouldn't outsource that to someone else. Eventually, once we had a good playbook for how do you sell big contracts, then at that point, I was then able to like bring in people who had done it before. So 0 to 10, it is find one type of customer, serve them in the best way, and then serve them in a predictable way. Ideally, is a customer who already has money. 10 to 100 grand is basically do the same thing by asking the people that you initially helped who else they may know, because that's going to be the way in which like it'll be a much easier sell. From 100K to $1 million, I'm actually going to break it down into 2 steps. Okay. I'm going to do 100K to 250K, because I believe it's at that point where you actually then go from being the person who is like the singer to then being the orchestrator. And the most important thing about the orchestrator is that they are a process builder. Yeah. So in business, there's this whole idea, and my friend talks about this, Ryan Dice, he talks about this, which is a value engine. And a value engine is, what is the simplest way that this business makes money? Yeah. So let's say you're running a personal brand agency, right? You might say something like, well, what is our value engine? Well, our value engine, so we have 3 value engines. One of them is how we get customers, right? That is a value engine. The second thing is, how do we then service the customers? That's a value engine. And then the third is, how do we keep the customers spending? Because if you just get those 3 things right, you have a perfectly good business. You're getting the customers, you're servicing them, and you're keeping them. And so once you're at 100K, as a founder, you should then be thinking about how do I then create these value engines? And so for the personal brand agency, what that value engine may actually be is, let's get a whiteboard, let's get some sticky notes, and let's basically say, right, how does value happen? In this case, how do we get a new client? And then just sticky note on it. Well, they see us at a networking event. Oh no, they came from a referral. Oh no, they came from a cold ad. What needs to happen then? All right, they need to then see some case studies. All right, great. What then needs to happen? All right, they then need to talk to their team. All right, what can we do to help them make it easier to do? And if you basically, as a founder, spend your time creating these value engines, what you find is you now have become the orchestrator and you're building a machine that exists independent of you. And that is basically creating from 100K to 250K as the value engines. And then from 250K to $1 million, and this is going to sound weird to so many people, it is just run the value engine and just input people in where you see bottlenecks in the value engine. Don't come up with any new ideas. Don't come up with any new products. Don't come up with any new services. Just do the thing. Because one of the biggest problems I see with so many entrepreneurs, and I have a bunch of CEOs that I have to basically be like, bro, lock in. Like, don't do anything else.
Yeah.
Right? Because you might have 20 customers on your content agency and be like, cool, I now want to go build out this new service. But then it's like, bro, we have 8 billion people in the world. You have 20 customers. Do you really think that like you've exhausted the potential customers? No, you haven't. So what you should be doing is just saying, how much more of these people? How do I get 200 of these? How do I get 2,000 of these? How do I get more of these? Or how do I sell more to the exact same 20 people? But often they just go, new product, new business, new service, because they think that they've capped out, but they haven't capped out.
That's so powerful, man. That is like blow my brain.
So there you go.
In terms of those jumps, what are some of the traps there and some of the things that you should actually do? So one of the things you just said was selling more to those customers. Yeah. How do you know, but you also said focus, right? And just focus on the one product. So if you've got the opportunity to create a different service that serves the same customer, should you do that? Or how do you decide when that's like a distraction versus an opportunity?
So this is a great question, because the answer to this is whatever the customers tell you that they need. Mm-hmm. So for example, when we started Fanbytes, the only thing that we sold were these influencer marketing campaigns, connecting brands to influencers. By the time that we eventually sold the business, we actually had 4 different products. Wow. We had an influencer product. We had a thing called Bite Sites, which was basically like a strategy offer. So it wasn't that we do the influencer campaign; it was that we just kind of give strategy. Then we had Bite Size Talent, which basically was a talent agency inside of Fanbytes. Mm-hmm. And then we had a paid media division, which basically did paid media. All of those where at some point we had at least 30% of our customers basically saying, hey, can you also do this as well? And there's a framework that I love, which is the before and after framework. So the before and after framework is basically a way for you to know what products or services to sell to your actual customers. And what it means is that you take your current service or the current problem that you're solving, and then you say, before the customer has this problem, what are the things that they are doing? And then how can I then help them to solve that problem? And then after they work with me, what are the things that they are doing? And then how can I build a solution to solve that problem? Right. So I'll give a perfect example with Fanbytes. The main product that we had was an influencer marketing service. But then before someone worked with us, what they would need to do would be strategy to understand where are we in the world of Gen Z and how do we position ourselves in the best way? Well, we can help with that. And so we're being driven by what the customers actually want. And then after they do an influencer campaign with us, after doing the organic campaign with us, what do? They tie in paid media into it. And so now we're going, well, we can also do that paid media side to it. And so rather than us just like inventing products and going and saying, oh yeah, maybe this, maybe that, we're saying, what do you do before you engage with us? How can we help you on there? And then what do you do after you engage with us? And then how can we help you on there? And once you do that, that is such a predictable way to scale, because what you're doing is rather than keep getting new customers, you're just increasing your wallet share of your existing customers, and you're increasing your revenue quality. And revenue quality is one of the most important things in any business, because it says how much more is this business going to stay? And the more revenue quality that you have, the more valuable your business.
That's super interesting. Is the other element there, like this, that I heard you speak to, like the speed to value, like speed to return on investment as well? Because I've heard, again, when you're talking about the different services, like how quickly can you deliver the results? Like why is that important?
At any point in business, you occupy a customer's mind for a very short period. And so it's very important that you show the value you are offering them very, very fast. So the businesses that show that, hey, you spent $1,000 with us, you made $2,000. It's like, oh, okay, that's great. So I think speed to value is important, but I think an even bigger thing is explicitness of value. Like, how obvious is it that in doing X, they got Y, and Y is the outcome they want? So, for example, I'm going to use Fanbytes as a good example here, which is in the early stages, we were like selling engagement and views and, vibes. And then I think in like our third year, I remember thinking, hang on, guys, if Paula's Choice, if Charlotte Tilbury, if Nike are spending $50,000 with us, even though it's nothing to them, how do we explicitly show that $50,000 is genuinely ROI positive? And so the way that we did that was that we took all the data that we had ever done in our campaigns, all the influencers, and we basically came up with a very good model to be able to say, okay, well, if we get these amount of views and these amount of engagement, that should lead to these amount of clicks. And then based on your conversion rate, that should lead to these amount of sales. And so now suddenly we could go to these brands and say, all right, you spend $100,000, $250,000, blah, 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 blah. And based on our internal metrics, that should mean that your ROI should be this. And so now suddenly the ROI was explicit.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was, we're going to give you the impetus and you the burden to figure out, did this actually work? Yeah. Now we're like, we both agree, this is how it works. We both agree, this is what success looks like. So that therefore means that if we constantly are hitting that target, then we're both happy, right? And we said, yeah. And that was one reason why by the time we sold the company, we had like 40% repeat revenue, which for a services business is extremely, extremely high. So explicitness of value is a very important thing that you want to have in any business.
And is that just like almost just like a model where you've come up and you've you've kind of roughly forecasted it, like initially, just because at the moment you're not communicating that, and you come up with a way to communicate it where it just makes it clearer and easy to understand?
Yeah, and look, there are some things where explicitness of value is very easy to do from the jump, right? If I'm a PT and I'm like, all right, in 3 months, you're currently 100 kg, we're going to get you to 90 kg. It's like, bro, here's a picture, here's another picture. But if you are a service-based business, then you need to do another thing, which is showing the value a lot more. And more often than not, it is just a case of having enough data, and the data doesn't need to be a lot, but like having enough data of a month or two of different events, campaigns, activations that you do, and then getting that to then feed your future stuff, because it's basic human understanding. Like if I pay you £1 and I make £2, I'm just going to keep giving you £1.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be like, oh, well, this is like an infinite money machine, right?
Yeah.
So you want to get your service or your product as close as possible to that.
You're obviously like really good at sales and marketing.
Apparently.
What are the fundamentals there, or some of your like favorite frameworks?
I wonder if there's any in the book, actually. Actually, cheat code number 3 is make it easy to win. And how that applies to like sales and marketing is actually, I remember when I got early on in the game, I remember it was like really, really hard for me to sell stuff to people. And I remember thinking that one reason why is because I myself haven't convinced myself that this is actually something of value.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I myself had convinced myself that this was something that was actually a very expensive product. And in the book, we talk about making it easy to win. And one way you make it easy to win is when your ceiling is someone else's floor. So by that, I mean when you are going in saying minimum or our spend is 10 grand, and that is someone's entry price, suddenly you go, oh, okay. So one thing I actively did during Fanbytes, and I still do it now, to make it easy to win, is I intentionally pick certain environments and locations where we're always talking about big numbers. We're always talking about big exits. We're always talking about that. And so as a result, what happens is that my brain is like, okay, this is a big game. This is a big game. Because a lot of sales and marketing, man, is just transference of energy and belief into a stranger. And a lot of that transference of energy and belief is a result of, do you yourself believe that the thing that you're offering is something of value? Because if you did, and I'm not going to share any, yes, there's all these tactics like pause and let the other person talk, etc. If you truly believed that the thing that you have is generally going to be of help and valuable to other people, then you have a moral duty to sell the shit out of the product that you have.
If you don't know, one of the most effective ways to grow a show on the internet is actually the most simple way. It's asking your audience to share, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So if you know someone who might get value from this episode or enjoy it, I'm just going to ask you a simple favor. Take out your phone right now, send it to them on WhatsApp, or if you're in a company Slack group or something like that, just share the episode in the Slack group. Yeah, it really helps me grow the show and grow it one audience member at a time. So would really appreciate it if you would share the show with someone who might get some value from it. Now, let's get back into the episode.
One of the guys I absolutely love, Dan Kennedy, an absolute legend. He tells this story of if you sold fire doors. If you are someone who sells fire doors and you go to a house and the house doesn't look great, the house doesn't look like a really nice house, and you knock on the door and you open the door and the person comes out and you're like, this person is probably not my customer, etc. And so you pull your punches. So you don't actually sell the thing. Even though you think that it would be useful for them to have a fire door, you don't sell the thing. And then in 2 days, you open up the newspaper and you see that that same house got burnt down the night before. That's on you.
Yeah.
Because you genuinely thought this thing could help them. But because you felt, icky or you felt bad about selling, as a result, you didn't actually sell. Like you didn't actually help them.
Yeah.
So it all starts with that belief, like this product is the shit, I am the shit, and I'm the sort of person who can really help people.
That's really nice. And that rings true. I've been in those situations before where you see the person, you're like, I just don't know, man. I don't know. You do know it would actually be valuable for them.
Yeah.
But you almost feel bad because I don't know, there's like something psychologically there.
Yeah.
It turns you
it's
off.
all psychological, right? It's all psychological. People say this a lot, and I say this in the book, that business and entrepreneurship is just a personal development course disguised as making money.
Yeah.
That's just it, right? So you should feel slightly scared. You should feel slightly icky. You should feel slightly uncomfortable because you're going against the core of your brain.
Yeah.
Your brain doesn't want to actually sell to strangers. Your brain doesn't want to talk to strangers. Like, remember, like as human beings in the early ages, if we talk to a stranger and that stranger could kill us, we ain't talking to strangers, right?
Yeah.
So you generally have to like go against what your natural form is if you want to make it in business.
Yeah. I'm loving this. What other cheat codes are important?
What we haven't talked about is actually, and I know Penguin, my publisher, would not want me to say this, but I think the book is very good. But my favorite chapter, if basically I said, don't read any other part in this book apart from this one chapter, is cheat code number 8, which is It's Not That Deep. It's Not That Deep is my favorite chapter because through Fanbytes, right, I was so emotionally invested in it. For the first 4 years, I was so emotionally invested in it. And the reason I was so emotionally invested in it was, and you've probably heard me say this on a podcast, but like I started it when I was 21. A few months before, my dad had passed away. And I remember before he passed away, like for the first time, he told me he was proud of me because he had seen like an article about Fanbytes and it was like, oh, okay, I'm so proud of you, right? And then literally like shortly afterwards, he passes away. And I don't have any siblings, so it was just me and him who lived in the council estate, and I saw him pass away. So I was like, boys, we have to make this work. I remember actually telling the story of when he passed away. I called up my mum and I told her, and I didn't cry. I called up my aunties. I didn't cry. You know, they were wailing on the phone, screaming on the phone. And then I called up my co-founder at that point, Ambrose. And I just couldn't even get the words out. I started crying. And the reason why was because, unfortunately, some years prior, Ambrose had also lost his dad. And so in that shared moment, you had these like 2 Ghanaian kids who had both lost their dads who were starting this business. And the fire that it gave us was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. But also, we were so emotionally invested in making Fanbytes work because it was more than just, oh, let's do this thing to make money. It was like, we got to make this happen because like subconsciously, we're also making this happen for our dads who are not here. And that helped to a point. But then one of the things that I started to realize was that I was so tied to the business that any single problem that happened, any small hurdle that happened, I felt like it would destroy the business. Whether it was hiring an employee who didn't end up going well, or an employee went to a competitor, and I would feel really vexed and frustrated about it. I remember one day we were trying to raise money. We were raising some money and an investor had committed to $500,000.
Yeah.
And he'd verbally committed to it and we'd gone through the docs and he signed it all. And then I remember that he called me in the evening. I think it was a Thursday evening. And it was like, Timo, I can't invest anymore. And I had already planned out everything. I planned out the projections. I planned everything. And he was like, hey, I can't invest anymore. I said, why? And he said, the reason I can't invest is because I'm having dinner with my friend. And he told me that TikTok is a Chinese spying app.
Yeah.
And I don't want to support China. So therefore, I can't invest in what you're doing.
Wow.
At that point, we were activating a lot of influencer campaigns on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I was like, how the fuck do you get back from that? And in that moment, I said, it's not that deep. It's not that deep. I remember just like getting off the call and just saying, it's not that deep. And what ended up happening was that we ended up raising the funds from other investors and the business went fine. But I do remember that being a moment for me where I thought, in the moment that someone said they were going to invest $500,000 into my business and then at the final minute they declined it, I could have said, well, that is the end of the business. I could have said, guys, this was our lifeline and we're completely done. Yeah. But by just saying it's not that deep, I was telling myself that I am bigger than my problems. Yeah. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when you're early on in your business, you have to take that position that you are bigger than your problems. And when you do that and you have these issues come up, oh, a client's paying late, a client's canceling, verbally say out loud, it's not that deep. And what will happen is you will just get so much perspective that whether you're at 10K a month, 100K a month, $1 million a month, is never that deep. It truly is never that deep. And as someone who thought it was always that deep, I've come to realize it is never that deep. There is always a way through it, and this too shall always pass.
That's really powerful. There's a couple of things you just said there, which would be really interesting to get your take on.
Yeah.
Hiring.
Yeah.
Investors. Technology. What are your approaches to all of those things? Like, should people take on investors? Like, why would you take on investors? Is that like an important thing?
Oh, interesting. So something I've never said publicly before, but I've said it to a bunch of my friends, is I think we raise investment out of fear. At no point in the business did our settled cash go less than $1 million. But we raised money because we were scared of what might happen. And I don't think that's a good position to ever raise money for. Now, you should raise money at a certain point if two things. If you have a very clear idea of what you're going to use the money for. I get so many pitches from people. Yeah, man, we're going to raise for marketing, for a team. Like, yeah, but what the fuck does that actually mean? You know, like, tell me exactly what you're going to spend the money on, because otherwise I'm just like giving you the money to like see what happens.
Yeah. Vibes.
We're investing for vibes. Another thing that I'm not a big fan of, I personally don't believe a lot of first-time founders who are like building their first, let's say, service-based business, I don't think they should raise money. Because I think the best sort of investment is customer investment, stuff that comes directly from your customers. If you are going to raise money, I think have a very specific reason for it. And more importantly, figure out who you can actually raise money from. In my opinion, unless you want to get an outcome, which is like $1 billion outcome, or even 100 million plus, you don't need to go to VCs. There is a fucking fixation with everybody who wants to just like raise from VCs. And you have to remember, to a VC, you are just a gamble. Like, they invest in 100 companies, 200 companies a year. You're just like one of them. And if you think a venture capitalist is going to be the reason why you succeed, you are horribly wrong. So what you want to do with investment is to go to people who have effectively lived the same journey as you. People who have built older versions of your business. Like in my book, cheat code number 6 is how to build a network when you are a nobody. And there's a framework we talk in there about how to find investors, which is something called the 2-step framework. And the 2-step framework is basically that you should only seek to get investors or get people involved who are like 2 steps ahead of you.
Nice, yeah.
And if you do that, what can happen is they can empathize with your problems, they can help you, they can give you money, they can give you advice that will stop you from doing the mistakes that they know you are going to make. And so that's a very important thing about investment. So only raise when you actually know what you're going to do with the money. Try and raise from people who are just 2 steps ahead of you. And again, in the book, we talk about basically like, what is the email you should send to investors? How should you get in contact with people like that? And then also, like, don't raise for vibes. And like, fundraising is not the goal. On hiring, I've changed my philosophy on hiring a lot. I used to think it was important to hire people who are very passionate about what you do. I now believe that you should hire people who were going to be good regardless of where they worked.
Interesting.
Have you heard of the PayPal Mafia?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's that crazy picture where it's like 15 of them in a picture and like 12 of them are billionaires, right? Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, who now runs like a firm, David Sachs, who sold Yammer for like 1 billion, Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, just like killers, right? Now, you could say, well, it's so great that they all were really passionate about payments at PayPal Mafia, right? But no, the key is all of those guys were going to win anyway. And so what Peter Thiel did was that he amassed people who were going to win anyway. And then he aligned their incentives to make sure that them winning meant he could also win.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes when we are early on in business, we think that the goal is to hire people who are really passionate about the thing we're doing. but it's actually not. It's hiring people who are passionate about the skill, about the thing they are doing, and then your business is just a nice conduit to helping them be the best that they can. I also believe that however much you can, hire people who have done the thing before. Because if you think about it, everything you're trying to do has just been done by other people. Your goal as a CEO is just to like bring the people who've done it before and then just like create the system for everyone to be able to work very well from it.
When do you think you should hire based on like we're trying to bootstrap, try and be like hire like young talent who at like at like good rates versus like, okay, now we need to hire like proven at like more competitive market rates?
Mate, I made that mistake so many times. It was ridiculous. Doing Fanbytes, I remember taking pride in the fact, because we're doing Gen Z marketing. And I remember taking so much pride in the fact that, yeah, man, our team has an average age of like 21, 22. It's like, no, mate, that was a massive L. So remember earlier I talked about value engines.
Mm-hmm.
And that being a very important thing, which is how do you make money? I believe that early on, before you build a value engine, you just need to hire people with the energy and the enthusiasm and the potential to learn the skill level. So for example, let's go to a content agency, right? Do you need to hire an MD of your content agency? No, but you probably need to hire a young person who cares about writing a lot. Not about what you do, but just like they really love to write.
Yeah.
At some point, once you've built your value engine, what you then want to effectively do is anytime there is a decision that needs to be made in the value engine, I believe that you should then have an individual who has already been through that decision several times. Now, that person could be basically a young person who has been in that decision so many different times. Or that person could then be a seasoned person. So the question is not at what point do you basically hire young, hungry people and at what point do you hire experience? I think is at what point do you bring on people who have recognized the patterns enough? And that point exists once you've built out your value engine. So a good example of this is, let's say you've now got your business to like 50 or 100K a month, and you've realized that one part of your value engines are keeping customers, right? And you know that your current team is like churning out customers, is not doing quite well. If in your value engine, it then says, all right, so what happens is that we get customers and then they do the campaign. And then at that point, we need to upsell them. And like, this is the upsell thing that we need to use. At that point, you need to make a bunch of decisions about, well, where is this customer? Are they actually heavily invested? How much have they actually spent? At that point, that's when I say then you hire like someone who can lead up client success, right? Because you're hiring them for the decisions, not for the actual tactics itself.
Yeah.
And then the final point about hiring, and this is going to be something which I know your listeners would have done. Don't hire someone and instantly give them a head of title.
Yeah.
Your first campaign manager is not your head of campaigns.
Mm.
Your first salesperson is not your head of sales. They're just a salesperson. They're just a campaigns person. And so many of us make that mistake because we think about building an empire and we're like, oh, you're the head of. But what eventually happens is that you may end up building resentment, or they may end up building resentment because you realize, well, they're not actually a head of person, but you've given them that title. And then you basically have to like hire someone above them because you've given them the head of title. Now you start like inventing bullshit titles,
Vice president.
Yeah. You're like, and then you have like executive vice president. And then you have like, I remember looking into a company and it was like, they had head of customer success, which was like this 24-year-old. And then it was like vice president of customer success. And then you have executive vice president of customer success. And then you had chief customer success officer. And it's like, bro, come on. Like, it's obvious here.
Yeah.
And they all know it. Like, they all know that you're basically being a coward.
Yeah.
And you need to make that call. So that's just a mistake that I think people should just highly, highly avoid. Your first salesperson is not your head of sales. Your first campaigns person is not your head of campaigns. Your first marketing person is not your head of marketing. Give them the appropriate title. And then eventually, if they grow into it, great. But if they haven't, no.
The other part in your journey that helped you like achieve good valuation was tech, like adding tech.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why is that important?
Sometimes I think that people try and force tech into their ideas. I looked at this business, which was a clipping agency.
Yeah, so it's like they clip up like podcasters, they put them out on TikTok, have like tens of accounts, 20 accounts.
And this business was doing well. This business, I think, was doing like 200 grand a month. I said, okay, cool. And then the next thing he says was, yeah, and we're raising to build like a technology platform, which does this and does that. It's like, why? Why are people paying you? He said, well, people are paying us because we can clip up their podcast and then we can just distribute it and they can get views. And I said, do they use the tech? Have they asked you for the tech? Have they said, I will use you more if you have technology? Does the technology actually help you to do anything more efficient or better? And I was like, no, because actually all our clippers are actually in Discord. And so we just talk to them in Discord. I was like, so why the fuck are you building a technology solution? If your customers are not going to use it, you're not going to use it. And he said, oh yeah, because tech has high valuations. I was like, okay, sure. But if the tech is not actually integral to what you're actually doing, then any buyer will see through that.
Yeah.
With Fanbytes, our first version of it was we wanted to be a SaaS solution. So our whole idea was like, we'll be a pure software as a service. A brand will come on, they'll be able to find influencers, etc. And then we got an email from the government and they were like, hey, we want to work with you to tell people about the minimum wage, but we want you to run the campaign and we'll pay you 100 grand.
Yeah.
And I remember turning to my co-founder. I was like, all right, boys, we are now an agency.
Yeah.
Because if Boris Johnson is going to run us 100 grand,
yeah,
fine, right? But then during that point, then I was like, okay, we actually do need tech, but it's not like a software subscription. It's actually a platform where we can upload content, i.e. the influencer content, and brands can also see in real time the data. Because that's actually what brands were like constantly saying. It's like, how are we comparing to our competitors? Who is going to go live? What is the views and impressions of this person? Should we boost this one? Should we not do this one, right? And actually, they wanted a technology solution. And for us, we also realized that we were doing so much stuff over email and getting people to send us an email to like show their screenshots, etc. That could all be done through tech. So we were being forced by the customer to introduce a tech solution. And we also saw the value there because it actually would like increase our efficiency and our cost and decrease our cost. So that was the reason why we then introduced technology into the business.
Interesting.
It wasn't some kind of like, let's force feed it.
Yeah.
It was actually driven by customer demand. And like one thing I want people to take away from this particular part of the podcast is, it is fine if your product doesn't have tech in it. Like, it is fine if your service business doesn't have tech in it. It's fine. Because the truth is, you are probably going to end up starting multiple different businesses. It's fine if this business is an agency which is a multiple of EBITDA and it's very clean and it's very simple. Make your first bag. It's fine. And then from that first bag, go do all the techie stuff. But like, if this is your first business and you haven't had your first win, do the most predictable thing, which is you have a service, you provide the service, you get paid, you pay out your costs, you have a profit. Just keep doing that. Don't read TechCrunch and all these things and think, oh my God, I have to do 1 billion, I have to do 100 million. No, you don't.
I'm super excited to share that this podcast is produced by 7X Content, my own podcast agency. So if you're looking to grow a podcast in 2026 or take your existing one to the next level, then you can reach out to us at 7xcontent.com. We'd love to hear from you. We work with some incredible creators, incredible brands, creating top 1% podcasts, and we'd love to show you some of our case studies. So check us out at 7xcontent.com.
In the book, What's Stopping You? That's the name of the book. Cheat code number 9 is called like your internal scorecard. And basically it's a whole chapter which shares frameworks and ways to basically like live by your internal scorecard. Because when you're an entrepreneur, you scroll social media, you're like, oh, he's got this thing, or she's got this thing, he's got this thing, and I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing this. But the truth is, especially if you're an entrepreneur or an enterprising person, you are going to be doing more things over time. And all you're doing is you're just accumulating enough skills at every single business, every single project. And eventually those skills compound to then do like a big thing. So I could not raise a fund when I was running Fanbytes because I had no fucking clue.
Yeah.
When I was like 17 doing Entrepreneur Express, like I could not like sell 500,000 packages. In fact, here's a crazy story. So I led Fanbytes for 6 years. The highest deal that we ever did was 500,000, right? Per brand. When Brain Labs bought Fanbytes, in 6 months, they had done 3 7-figure deals.
Wow.
With the same product,
Yeah.
the same service. Why? Because they had the skill of just doing that for so many different years that to them it was just like, oh yeah, duh. This
Easy,
is just how we do it.
Yeah.
But with Brain Labs, they could not have done that, say, 10 years before because they didn't know how to do it. And I'm sure at some point, if I had still been running Fanbytes, we'd have got to then selling these 7-figure deals because we'd have learned it. We'd have improved our skill on it. But we didn't know how to. And this is why I say to, again, so many entrepreneurs. It's like, bro, the first business, just make it mad simple. Just get your bag, you know? It's like, just get your bag because life is different when you are someone who has done well, opportunities, doors open, as opposed to you just almost trying to do a Hail Mary from your first ever business. It doesn't make sense.
One of the things people will know you from now is your personal brand.
Yeah.
And I guess 2 questions here. One is like, how important was that on the journey to date? And how important is it in terms of like growing a business, selling a business? And the second thing, I guess, is I've got friends or guests on the show and they are constantly coming to me with this, where they're like, I'm a founder, I've just sold my business or I'm starting this business. I need someone to grow my personal brand. Like, how the hell do I do it? So I'd be interested, like, how important is it? And then how have you built your own?
I've changed my perspective on this over time. So whilst I run Fanbytes, I didn't have, say, a general personal brand, but I did have a niche personal brand. So in the marketing circles, Fanbytes had a personal brand. Maybe that was max 5,000 people. But if you ask 5,000 people, at least half of them would go, oh yeah, I know Fanbytes. And I think that's a bigger point about personal brand, which is at the beginning, rather than being well known, you just want to be known well by the right people. That's it. That's really the purpose of personal brand. If you are like a lead gen agency selling to B2B tech brands, post stuff about B2B tech brands, post on LinkedIn, post on Insta about B2B tech brands. Like, don't care about having millions of views because more times than not, they're not actually going to come from the people that you want to actually help. So that's the first point. Yes, it helped us, but it helped us just being known very, very well from like a very specific group of people. And then your second question was about
How have you grown your personal brand? Like, how have you personally done it? Like, did you do it yourself? Like, do you use an agency?
Yes.
Like,
so at first I started off doing it internally. I mean, actually, if you scroll way down to my Instagram, you see some of the worst videos. I hired my chief of staff from my prior company, Cameron. And we're just trying to figure out, right? And so there were times where I'd like just put a video, I'd put a phone selfie style, and then I just talk. And I remember thinking, man, these are shit videos. But it's fine if they're shit videos because I expect them to be shit because I haven't done it before. And then I got the help of an agency, these guys here. I got the help of an agency called Your Social Currency. I think that, they help to make things a lot more like scalable, systemized. Now, the truth is, and this is going to be somewhat controversial, right? I think what happens is that people see people like myself or Cody Sanchez or the Hormozis of the world or the Gary V's of the world, and they kind of believe that you have to be like that person.
Yeah.
You kind of have to have that personal brand. And I've seen some incredibly sharp, confident, amazing entrepreneurs who have the shittest personal brand ever.
Yeah.
And you're like, how on earth is that you?
Yeah.
And the reason why is because they're trying to do here's how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
When actually a lot of them, it is like, well, lean into your competence. Like, you are a nerd. And if you're a nerd, then make like nerdy topics about nerdy things that you like and introduce your story into it. That would position you as one of one. And I think a final thought on that is I have a big thesis here, and we're making a big change to our content going forward. Personal brands are now becoming media brands. But if you think about what a media brand is, media brands have their own formats, they have their own storylines, they have their own characters. And I think there is a world in which short form video, Insta, LinkedIn, and then obviously long form, YouTube, in which rather than the content being about the person and their background, the person is almost a personality in a bunch of shows and formats that they do.
Yeah.
So for example, some of our best formats, which actually involved brands, Lovable, was when we had me sitting in the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Me sitting in the street and then people pitching me to win 10 grand.
Yeah.
Right? Like one of my good friends, Simon Squibb, right?
Yeah.
Simon's actually a very accomplished entrepreneur. But his videos, especially on short form, are not like, here's how to do this.
No.
They are, what's your dream?
Yeah,
What's your
format? Yeah.
It's just a format. Simon is a presenter of the format, but then there's different characters. And I actually think that's where personal brand is going, especially on short form, because we could all spend 10 minutes going through TikTok, Insta, YouTube Shorts, blah, blah, blah. And then 5 people who we watch their videos, 5 people could come into this room now or just walk past us and you would not recognize them. But if you scrolled enough through, say, Simon's Insta, what's your dream? What's your dream? What's your dream? And then even in a week, you just saw him walk past. You go, oh shit, that's the what's your dream guy.
Yeah.
So you may not even know his name, but you know his formats. I think that's where personal brand and media is going now. So to the founders, to the content people who are listening to this, think about your brand as like a media brand, format driven, as opposed to it just being about yourself as an individual. Because people buy into the format before they buy into the person.
Yeah.
Whereas beforehand, I think because there were not that many people doing it, it was like people buying into the person, but that's changed.
Let's talk about when you actually sell. Like, how do you know when's the right time to sell? And then what happens after you sell? Like, what are you up to?
One of the worst times to sell is when you need to sell. And often it is when you have exhausted the market. So I talk to so many founders, because one thing that we're doing next year and making public is that we have a peer program. It's called like Ready to Exit. And it's all about helping founders position their businesses to sell.
Yeah.
And I've been having conversations with so many founders about this, trying to see like what will be very valuable to them. And one of the mistakes I see a lot of people make is basically, let's say you are running a business and you have a chart like this. And for those who aren't watching, this is your CTA to go and watch it on YouTube. So you have a chart, and what people tend to try and do is that they try and sell at the peak of their business.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not the right way to do it. The way to actually do it is that you try and sell when you are 70% of your way to the peak. Because what that means is that you are then leaving something on the bone for the buyers.
Yeah.
Because as a buyer, and I've helped a few friends buy companies, what you want to be able to do is be able to have enough narratives which justify the purchase that you're going to make. So I'll give you a very concrete example with Fanbytes, right? Which is we had 3 main narratives for why it made sense to spend tens of millions of pounds with us or on us. The first narrative was that we had 40% of our revenue coming from America, but we didn't have a single person there.
Yeah.
And so if you know that to a buyer who has an American office, you're like,
Yeah,
whoa.
they're licking their lips. Yeah.
They're like, whoa.
Yeah.
So you're telling me
The lion is looking at the carcasses.
they're like, whoa, you know. So now it's a great reason for you to then potentially buy. The second reason was so much of what we did was with, say, the head of social at Nike or the head of blah, blah. But if you're a bigger company, you are talking with like the CMO of Nike. And that person has a lot more budget and a lot more sway. And so now we also had another story, which was basically we engage with like the heads off. If you buy us, you have C-suite access. You can take the exact same product and sell it for a lot more. And that is exactly what happened, which was that they took the exact same product, they sold it to the CMOs, they made multiple millions from the exact same product. And then the third thing that the third story that we had was we said that we do influencer marketing mainly. We have a bit of paid media, but it's not actually that much. So if you, Mr. Buyer, have a good paid media performance division, then what happens is you can just take all our existing customers who are doing organic, you can plug them into your performance, and then you can also make more money. So now if I'm a buyer, I'm like, hang on a sec. Number one, you don't have an office in the US, but you have 40% coming from that. Oh, and I have an office? Yeah, we are absolutely going to tear it up. You don't talk to the C-suite, but I know all the C-suite people, and I can take your exact same product and sell it for way more. Oh, we are absolutely going to tear it up. And then, oh, you mainly do organic influencer stuff and not much paid, and I have a massive paid media team. Oh, we're going to tear it up. So now I have 3 reasons to basically say this company really is a bargain to us. And for a lot of founders, they don't do almost that storytelling for the buyer. They just go, I want to sell my business. Do you want to buy it? It's like, no, I don't really want to because I don't really know if it's going to be worth the price. But if I can justify it over and over through these different stories, that's when you win. The second thing I'd actually say on that point is at any point in any market, there is consolidation, right? I actually think in the book, I talk about this, like Chico 10 is called How to Get Lucky. And one of the elements of luck that we talk about is how you basically time the market, And a big reason and a big thing about timing the market is when you see consolidation happening with the big guys buying the smaller guys, but also when some of the big guys in your industry have got private equity.
Yeah.
Because the way companies grow once they've raised PE money is they buy other companies. That is the main reason. So if you see your biggest competitors in the space raise PE money, or maybe people tangential to you raise PE money, that is a sign to you that there's going to be consolidation. And the number one thing, if you are someone who wants to sell your business at that point, is that you start making friends with these people. You start dating these people. Because if you start dating these people like, hey, let's do some kind of partnership together, let's do this together, that's the way you date them. And then eventually, when they want to buy you, that's when you get married. So many people don't think about this. They just go, yeah, man, I want to sell it.
So they would be like your competitors, or they'd also be like they be kind of like strategic people who are kind of
well, both.
Yeah, both. Yeah, and you just start reaching out to them.
Yeah,
building those relationships, flirting a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, there's this analogy I give, right? Like date before you get married. When you meet someone, your first thought is not right. Let's get married.
Yeah.
You date a bit.
Yeah.
Similarly, a business exit is a marriage.
Interesting.
It is the consummation of two different entities.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. You'd actually be so surprised, man. The number of business exits that are basically one founder knew the other founder. One founder had a bigger company and basically was like, your smaller company can help us.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to buy you. Because the weird thing, this is such an unspoken thing, but a lot of big companies, say they've raised PE money, the founders know it's not actually their money.
Yeah.
Because if I raise 100 million from PE guys to buy companies, like, it's not my money.
Yeah.
And even at that point, maybe I've taken like 10 million or so for me anyway from the PE round. So really, I'm just like, yeah, well, it seems to make sense.
And I got money to spend, probably.
And I got money to spend. And you just be so, I've now seen this so many times. Like one of the companies I sold, the PR agency, one is called Megan. We sold that business to the business that she worked for before for 19 million.
Wow.
Because basically, like, she had built this PR agency. When we knew it was time to potentially sell, I said, write a list of all the potential people. And then she then wrote her prior employer. I was like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. Like, They know you. They know how the business works. They're just a bigger PR agency. Your focus is on sustainability. They want to have a focus on sustainability. Let's just talk to them. And then it was like a deal which took 2 months.
Yeah.
Done. Because they didn't need to go like, is Megan a good person? Is this a good business? It's like, Megan worked for us for 8 years. We know.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how many times those sort of deals get done in the world of M&A.
I've heard some people say that in this process, you should actually almost say, these are the things we want to do and we want to be acquired so we can do them. Like, how important is that? So in your case, was it like, we want to have offices in San Francisco, New York, we want to be in Singapore, we want to kind of 5x the team next year, but you know, we need to be bought to do that. So.
Yeah, so I think like both people know that's cap.
Yeah.
Like buyers aren't donuts.
Yeah.
You know, like they know when something is cap and when something isn't. But again, that is just a good example of a narrative. And a narrative is not a bad thing. A narrative is not a negative thing. It is just justifications for why this deal makes sense. And yeah, so if you have things, you know, I think in Fanbytes' case, it was, we want to play bigger. The way that we play bigger is actually by getting to the C-suite, is by having a full suite of different services that we can offer to our clients so that we can do the influencer stuff, the SEO stuff, etc. And like, these were all true things. And then the third thing that I also said was like, bro, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I was a 27-year-old guy. My co-founders were also 27 and 25. We now had a business which was actually quite a beast. I'm like, bro, what?
Yeah.
You know? And I'm like, all right, can somebody help me here?
Yeah.
And so, yes, it is true to have, you know, like reasons and things to do. But really remember that the foundation of it is they're all just justifications that the buyer can use and you can also use for why this deal should make sense.
What does it feel like the day the money lands in the account?
It felt insanely insane for 6 weeks, and then afterwards it became underwhelming. So the day that the money landed in the account, I remember like walking around King's Cross with my two co-founders, and we had announced the deal had happened. BBC, Forbes, everyone is covering it. I'm getting congratulations. But the money hadn't hit our account yet.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting all these people saying, oh my God, well done. And I'm like, yeah, but where the fuck's the money, bro? And the reason why is just because it had to go through like different stages, right? It was like the PE guys had to send it to Brainlabs had to send it to our lawyers, and then our lawyers had to send it to our bank, then our bank, all of that. So we're out here saying, yeah, man, thank you so much, but we don't have the money. And then I remember us walking around, my co-founder, Mitchell, like he refreshes his bank account. He's like, and we're like, shit. And then I check my bank account, it's still like 000. Because I opened up literally a fresh new bank account for this. And I'm like, shit. Did I give someone like the wrong bank
sort code?
details?
Yeah.
Wrong sort code, account number. And then my other co-founder, Ambrose, he refreshes. He's like, and I'm checking, man. I'm like, fuck, there's still nothing there. I'm panicking. And then I refresh and I'm like, oh yeah. And I'm shouting, I'm like, let's fucking go, lads. And that was an amazing period. That was just sensational period. Now, one of the things that is very, very interesting is that over time, your brain then gets used to a certain level. That happened probably after 6 weeks. And I went, okay, cool. This is me now. And this is actually a very good point to make, which is strive to achieve. Like, do everything you can to be the person that you know that you can be. But then realize that it actually was all about just the realization of who you could be. It wasn't about the money. Because I grew up like poor, counselor's estate kid. I was driven by money. I was driven by financial. And then literally like the 4th year of my business, when I'd come and I'd see, 60 people in an office working on this idea that I had in my mind, I went, wow. Yes, it's about the money, but it's actually more about the ride with these people, like the journey with these people. And realize that anything that you end up achieving, you will basically get to a certain point and go, oh, cool. That was nice. Even, for example, this book, I'm stopping you. This book is out on Jan the 15th, right? When Penguin came to me and they were like, cool, let's do a book. It's like, okay, cool. This sounds amazing, great, Penguin, etc. And I was like really, really tied to the idea of this doing numbers, this being like Sunday Times bestseller, everything, right? And then I remembered something. I remember that I was also really attached to selling Fanbytes, becoming financially free and doing that stuff. And realizing that in 6 weeks, I then just went back to, okay, cool.
Yeah.
This is my life now. And now just,
Yeah.
time to get on with it. And when I remember that, I went, okay, Timo, regardless of how well this book does, if it's on the Sunday Times bestseller list, if it's not on there, the fact is you wrote a book. It's a book you're proud of. It's a book that you genuinely think can help people. You got your team involved and they all feel very energized to make it happen. As long as you did everything that you can, detach from the outcome. Because let's even say this then becomes like a Sunday Times bestseller. Great. Let's even say it stays a Sunday Times bestseller for like 2 months. Cool, and then what? Because then the thing that's meaningful is the people who will like stop me in the street and say, hey, I read that book and as a result of that, I grew my business. Hey, I read that book and as a result of that, I got that promotion at that job. Hey, I read that and your chapter, which said it's not that deep, was a reason why I left this relationship that I thought I should have left anyway, but then you finally gave me that push. Because like that is the thing which is sustaining.
Yeah.
And that was such an amazing moment for me because I thought the moment that you as a kid had constantly yearned for, to be able to be like financially set and, generational wealth and all that crap people talk about, that lasted you like 6 weeks and then you thought, let's get back to it. How much more when a book then becomes like a really good book and it impacts people? You just be like, oh, great, okay, that was nice. And now get on to it. I think for people listening, I think you should practice what I call a healthy detachment from your goals, which is at some point, sometimes you get so attached to your goals that it fucks you up, that you're like, oh, this has to happen, it has to happen. But when you are relaxed and detached and you go, you know what, I will do my best and the rest will happen, you're more likely to actually achieve it.
This has been amazing, Timo. Absolutely loved it. And I'm like, can't wait to get my hands onto the book.
Well, send you a signed copy, yeah.
Insane. All right, man. Thanks so much for doing this. And we'll definitely do another one, try and get you back on. But yeah, this was insanely valuable. And super excited about the book and reading it and getting into it. And thanks for just sharing so much.
All good, man.
It's amazing. If you enjoyed this episode with Timo, I think you're going to love my episode with Jodie Cook. She's an incredible entrepreneur, and her and Timo think about life and the world in a very similar way. So I think you'll really get on with some of her frameworks for living an incredible life and being really successful as an entrepreneur. She also just happened to have sold her agency for lots of money as well. So cue that up next on your podcast player or on YouTube. I think you're going to love it. And thanks for watching as always. I hope you have a great week.